So I was just having a thought process about what you actually need as a man and as a woman. And I would say the first thing that you need is each other. Now that might trick, some folks into saying, what? No, we don't need each other. We're self-sufficient. First off, I guess it matters as to how you define it. But I think in the simplest sense, in the simplest terms, the truth of the matter is that men and women fundamentally need each other. Now, that's presuming that they aren't substituting each other with poison. The way, of course, I would define poison is, pornography would be men's poison. Homoerotic relationships is another form of substitution for women. That's something that makes sense to me. It's something that sounds like the reason these things exist, and people will not agree with me on that, but it's just my thoughts. Women will find a way to substitute men, primarily through provisions, safety, and the truth is the society, fulfills that role completely. And women still, of course, do want, a sexual companion, right? They just want the best. And, society, by and large, provides for that as well. But the point is that if you take away all of the factors, you have a guy and a gal, that's all they really need as far as companionship is concerned. All right, the next thing you need is a place that you own, an asset where you can sleep, where you can eat, where you can commute and just hang out, and where you can basically do anything that you want, right? And it costs almost nothing to live there. Of course, I'm referring to property taxes. Okay, so that's another thing that you need. Another thing that you need is a steady form of income. This income can be anything. It can be donating plasma. It can be mowing people's lawns. It can be, some type of task or job of some sort. Okay? Something that gives you access to regular amounts of real quality food. I would argue real quality food is, number one, ruminant meat. Number two, probably eggs, and then after that, it's probably monogastric meat. So pork, chicken, that sort of thing. I think besides that, there's not much else you really need as a guy and as a gal. Now, people do not like how I like to lump in men and women as needing each other. I think that they don't like that because this creates a form of dependency, a form of symbiotic necessity, right? Because the truth is that if you are a guy and you go your whole life without a woman, I think that that's not good for you. Now, I think you can manage it and you can come up with a way to live with it, but I don't think that it's the ideal. I think the ideal is a man and a woman who are, happy with each other and have what they need. That seems to be what is necessary. It seems to be, come on, Leah, come on, girl. It seems to be what is required. And if you cannot get that, everything just starts to slowly fall apart to an extent. And it's sad because there are so many men out there and women who are basically slaves to our current system. The way it all works, you are forced by process of elimination to work hours that you don't want to work at a job you don't want to work, just to be able to maintain the minimal cost of living, and it's not good. I just got done working a 3-day shift, 8 hours each, so 8, 16, 24 hours, and it was a night shift, and my back and my hip were just in agony the entire time. It was excruciating, it was painful, it was exhausting, and I had no choice. I had to work these hours to meet my monthly bills. And the fact of the matter is that a lot of people are working not because it's a passion project, but because it's a necessity. They can't not work because of how our society functions. And the reason that they don't want to work is not because they hate working. It's because the work they have to work doesn't pay enough, isn't worth the amount of hours that they do, isn't worth the labor that they do, and is not worth the sacrifice that they give. So going back to, what do you need? The truth is that if you had a guy and a gal who understood the economy and, lived minimally, they could go ahead and buy a small house in a small town and, just have very, very small bills, work part-time, and they can maintain their expenses. They can maintain their living conditions. And that's the most important part, because a guy does not go to work thinking, yay, I get to go to work. I get to get away from my wife. I get to get away from my children. No. He's like, damn it, I gotta get up and go to work and leave my wife and my children again. Those are just my thoughts. You can agree, you can disagree. I don't think I'll be changing my mind anytime soon.